I'm Kelsey Moser, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel, where no sandbagging goes unscrutinized.
Okay, this is going to be episode 6 of Middle Kingdom Minds, our LPL talk show. And, you know, episode 6, obviously 6, an ominous number there, Raz. A lot of Christians get worried about that one. I notice if they see any combination of them anywhere, they're worried. You know, they imagine the image of the devil in a leather jacket offering them untold riches and power in the material world now. The price, just their soul. Everything they cared about, everything they tried to do. Anyway, guest for this episode, Kelsey Moser. Obviously, former co-host Narrative Work. Technically could still be current co-host. It's just that the times that she told me she's available, like, I don't actually, like, I think I might have actually hit my wall of where it's possible to schedule guests. Because it would be about, like, you know, it would be about like 9 in the morning for me, and I don't actually know anyone else who has a time zone that operationally works for that. I think even North Americans will be like, I'm going to be in bed then, like. So we might have actually, it's not, here's the thing, it's not that she can't do shows, it's just that nobody else can do shows with her. So in some senses, that perfectly summarizes the situation right now.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Everyone was wrecking Kelsey when she was in H2K. I mean, understandably, to be fair, if you join H2K, you know, it's questionable decision making from the out. So, you know, you sort of deserve what you get. You have to hit rock bottom if you join H2K. You have to finally accept, like, I fucked up my life here. I need help. And then if you say that, people will give you help. You know, people will help you out of a bad situation. And so now it's great. She's on 100 Thieves. They've got actual money. That's good. They've got a house. Functional one with internet that works, electricity that works, everything. They've got all the bells and whistles, Raz. You won't believe it. Not only that, but you know what? Everyone was ragging on her because the H2K team was losing all the time. Well, now she's winning. She's won 4 out of the last 6 games. The 3rd in the Academy League, which I'm going to pretend to care about for the 1 minute that I say this sentence, and then pretend like I didn't just look all that shit up and go, oh, right, oh, she's actually doing all right. Yeah, I'll mention that, right? I'll pretend I know about that. I haven't watched any of the shit, but, you know, I assume it's all right. I assume she's doing decently. How is the Academy world treating you, Kelsey?
I like it. We have kind of an interesting team because 4 of the 5 players have kind of never been on a team before, so...
That sounds good for you, right? You get to start from square one, mold them from the beginning.
So it's pretty fun. Yeah, I think we're doing, I don't know what our expectations were going in, but I think we're doing okay. Yeah.
Yes. I believe there was some famous quote where some guy was like, you know, give me a man when he is a boy and he will be mine forever. Unfortunately, I believe it was like an evil Jesuit guy who said that. So I'm not exactly sure it's the life blueprint to follow, but it works. That's all I'm going to tell you. It does work.
I'm just a big fan. It's like, I don't know what our expectations were going into this, but I think we're filling it. I think we're checking the boxes.
Yeah, obviously they're pretty consistent mistakes that are being made over and over again, so they get yelled at for that, but overall, not bad.
Okay. Right. Now we're going to go back into your original region, Kelsey. We're going way, way back. China, the one that made you, I wouldn't say famous, like I won't be silly in that regard. Like, I think China made you exist, and then maybe later you became famous. I would hope that would be the order, you know. So, like, I mean, put it this way, almost everyone watching this episode now probably isn't actually even aware that the two of you used to have a Chinese League of Legends talk show. That's how long ago we're talking about here, folks.
Oh, I mean,
that was back when. Well, what's mental is that one talk show basically was some sort of mad, like, secret Illuminati group of people who were allowed to become, like, Western talent in the Chinese region. Like, I think about how many people from that show have got a job since. Isn't it like half the people who were on it?
Yeah, it's
at least. See?
Good amount.
What's great is, at the time, no one gave a fuck about that show, including people on the show, I noticed. But that secretly was where you needed to be. That was like, you know, like Greenwich Village in the fucking 70s or whatever they say, where like Andy Warhol and stuff were there. Like, oh my God, it's the place to be. Well, now it's no longer the place to be because everyone's been in. Actually, what's great is everyone's already been in the LPL and out. Like, Raz is the last one. He was the one at the end. Like, is it still good there? They were like, yeah, it's cool. The water's still fine. And then they were like, where are you guys going though? Oh, I'm just going to live in Australia. And they're like, oh, what the fuck? Like, half of them just left, didn't they? They all abandoned you. You were thinking you were going to get there. You're like Papa Smithy when he went to Korea. Like, this is going to be so sick. And then everyone was like, yeah, we're off, Papa, forever. You're on your own, mate. He's like, what? I'm just here on my own. With only LS and fucking crumbs? What is this cruel and unusual punishment? I thought I was coming for Monty and Doha. No, LS and crumbs it is.
God bless. Yeah, it's definitely, you come in, you're like, this is a big-ass team. Wait a second. Where you come from? It's nice building a team back up and, having everyone getting passionate about the league, because one thing I really enjoyed about, like, the LPL itself is that it really does feel like a silent club no one cares and no one knows about, that all you really do just need to, as long as you watch the games, as long as you know about the history of the players, and then suddenly you're just friends. And I felt like that's what really got me into the LPL. That's what got me into the old show, China Talk. It was just like, I was the most unqualified mother lover out there, man. All I was I just watched the games and had conversations with them, and they were so grateful. It's like, no one even, they would talk to us, but they didn't know what they were talking about.
There were literally like 2 people besides me tweeting about LPL on Twitter in like 2013, 2014. That was Raz and Drexen. It was like, okay.
Yes. If you come to the secret, hidden inner room where they would have their meetings, if you knock on the door, right, they say password, who was the best AD carry in 2014? Obviously, if you say OllieJ, like a locked door just comes down and then it just says that no entry or something. If you say Nami, you get it immediately. But then there's another door inside. This is where it gets more deep, right? Because then they say, but who was the second best AD carry of 2014? Again, if they say OllieJ, they're definitely not getting in. So, well, if they can pass those 2 tests, Raz, then they can come into the LPL secret club. If they can't, then they're forever banished with the other heathens who have no background in fan fiction writing, as far as I can tell. That was also a secret side quality. I'm not aware why that was such an important quality, but it brought them together. And I mean, in some ways, to be fair, writing League of Legends, I made the point before, it's not that dissimilar to writing fan fiction, In fact, I would make the joke at this point, the people who write for the players' lobby basically just are writing fan fiction. So you quit a year early, that would have been the job right there. You could have just combined the two initial passions into one. You could be writing right now about how OllieJ's like. And then I've decided at next Worlds, I'm going to fuck Perks up. And it's like, that seems a bit outrageous. I can't believe OllieJ would say that. And you remember, all right, it's the players' lobby. My mistake. Yeah, of course, OllieJ didn't say any of that. What he said in an interview was, I hope to perform well next year. And then some guy was like, that's not how I would say it, though, as someone who grew up in SoCal. So here's what OllieJ would have said. And then they just start typing away. And their editor goes, that's brilliant. That's amazing. I can't believe he said that. You go, well, didn't say that, but if we pretend he said it though, isn't it cool? Yeah, you're right, it is actually. So along those lines, let's find out if the LPL is cool. Because actually one thing I've got to say, Raz, that is still a bit underwhelming is, I do feel like I've sort of screwed people if they really did begin the LPL at the beginning of the split, because first of all, obviously they won't know that it doesn't really count until the Chinese New Year anyway. So all that hype that we built up, it's sort of a little bit fake. Some of it's real. You get the occasional match that's good, but you have a game where it's a good match, but then there's a sub playing, or the team just doesn't look like they've got it together. Well, the problem is, they have started to play the real matches now. We've got a couple we're going to talk about in this episode. But there are still the teams, obviously the most obvious one is FPX, the team that's the top of the league right now. But they still haven't played some of the games you need to know if they're actually the best team of the LPL. So yeah. I'm just going to look on the bright side that gives lots of room for analysis. And also, because I'm an even enough bastard to know this, that also gives great opportunity for all the analysts to make predictions, which are then wrong. And then we all know that means that they're terrible analysts and should never be listened to again. So even though we all know we're all going to be wrong. By the way, you know what my low-key favourite aspect of doing analysis like that is? That even though all we should do, like a prisoner's dilemma, Raz, is agree as analysts in all these games, that there's nobody can predict 75% of the time. There's nobody, we all know that. It's just a fact, there isn't anyone. So we should all agree to never hold predictions as really indicative of how good your analysis is. But instead what we do, like absolute idiots, is, even though we ourselves know that, we then try to just deflect our own poor predictions by making light of our friend analyst or colleague analyst's bad prediction, as though that makes them an idiot, therefore exacerbating the entire vicious cycle. Why do we do it? Why do we do it?
It's the cheap game because you may like the thing.
You can win a few.
I'd benefit off this. Like, oh, look, my predictions were so good. Like, look at all that stuff. And then later on, like next split, it's blasted. Like for instance, I said Freak of Freaks would just have like a great split, and you know what? If anyone pays attention to like LCK, it's like
hasn't been going well.
I just die by my own sword. That's the game.
You hold on to the ones that were good, like the 2017 RNG were going to be first place prediction, you know, in their group like that. That's a good one to hold on to. We're just going to ignore all of the other predictions I've ever made except for that one.
Exactly.
There we go.
That was the only one that really counted, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
You know, like season 5 Worlds. I don't think there even was a season 5 Worlds. It just went straight from Samsung Light to yeah, exactly. You know, whatever. I think I was just a misprint. SKT didn't win 2 in a row. Right, 100%. Let's start this episode then. So, as I alluded to, part of the problem is FPX is still top of the league, but we're kind of waiting for them to play some of the other teams, so we really know if they're the best. Now, Kelsey, you are someone who is well known as an admirer of NateDOhDoubleG. So, how much? No, but you betrayed him now.
Well known.
I like certain things that he does. I think they're interesting, but over time, like I'm an admirer of him in the sense that I feel like he understands his brand so well, right?
Okay.
Like this guy understands his brand incredibly well. And he just kind of plays it to the point where I feel like he's even kind of in his brand in the game, and yet they still win games that way. It's really impressive, actually.
Well, I will say, like I never claimed to be like some super deep analyst on League anyway, but I will say I don't understand half the shit that NateDOhDoubleG does, even some of the picks he makes. But when people do that consistently and it works, I have to like tip my hat. I can't just go like, well, you don't know what you're doing, even though it's working all the time, even though I don't understand what it is. Like there must be something to it. There'll be some logic.
Yeah, I think it's like he always has this like the whole super carry NateDOhDoubleG, and he builds
I love that shit.
These really tanky builds.
Yes.
And then like there's always this back and forth between him and his fans of you would have won that game if you didn't build like this, and then he wins the next set building like even more tanky and doing even less damage, and it's like, wow, okay. This guy.
By the way, he is legitimately the best streamer out there.
Oh yeah, he is.
Actually,
he's insane.
The greatest streamer.
Why would he do?
I've never seen someone like, if there's ever downtime, as in just legitimately in queue time, or just like even when he's going back to base, he'll just literally go on to whatever music players out there. Just like there are 2 things that he'll just either dance to or sing to, and he has like props. He is a legitimate performer in the game, in stream. It's insane. And he has his own like catchphrases, like that is just like, oh, you know, unfortunate, or is it? It's a pity. It's a pity. Like there's saying things that people pick away that if they like, he's basically sneaky in terms of streaming personality, but like on steroids in the fact that he is always on. There's never a moment when NateDOhDoubleG is like turned off, and it's just insane to see that as a personality.
Like his brand consists, like I said, he's in his character in game on stage as well. It's like actually crazy.
Yes.
Thing is, that's what I can appreciate though, because you know one thing that always annoyed me was the fact that Hai actually like spent the first few years of his career like denying all the narratives. Like, what do you mean? I'm really good mechanically. It's like, come on, mate, you're obviously not. Like, don't be ridiculous. Like, we'll give you credit for everything else. We can't give you credit for that as well, can we? Like, we're just literally already telling you the best shot caller, best leader. What's mad is like, Hai actually he was like unwittingly forced down a career path where it was all about the fact he was a shot caller. Like obviously he had to play all those different positions. At least NateDOhDoubleG like embraces it from the beginning. Like you could imagine NateDOhDoubleG in their house is like not even letting any of the other players get like a bottle of water out the fridge just so they become entirely dependent on him and him telling them whenever they can do anything at that. But you can all breathe now, right? Oh, they're brilliant. He coordinated everything. He's amazing. He is sick though. Like, if you look how many different teams with completely different players he's taken and made them all really good. And usually they don't start with like beasts, you know. Like normally it's like that's why I give him so many props. So many of these players start as like a flawed player. Like, oh, he was a good jungler in Korea, but will he make it in the LPL? And then after they've played with NateDOhDoubleG, they're like bona fide, like all pro type.
Yeah,
I think like go on, you go.
I think his teams have a very defined, straightforward system. the teams that he plays on. And that's you can debate kind of what it is, but I think the most recent iteration on FPX is, he plays these types of counter matchups that aren't necessarily supposed to be effective damage dealers, but they're supposed to get a lot of pressure in lane, right?
Right.
You get a lot of pressure in lane, and you can frontline later. So stuff like Renekton, like in the past Poppy or Clutter, whatever, he would just get like insane pressure, even though his pick would like not be the kind of damage dealer you would expect. And then one of the side lanes gets super far ahead off of the fact that like you can't enter river around mid lane, right? The enemy team can't enter river around mid lane, and then he frontlines for them in team fights. And then it's not the cleanest thing ever, but it's pretty straightforward. It's kind of easy to execute, and it's pretty easy to win, especially early on in seasons when other teams don't have the most cohesive identities or don't really understand the macro that well. Like the macro-oriented teams in the LPL kind of take time to ramp up. So Doinby's teams always they get wins right away,
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Not so much in the gauntlet stage.
There are 3 picks for me that basically do it for me. Like the first one we just saw recently, which is Renekton. Another one, which is 2 picks that he's gone through, is the Karma and the Scion. And Karma and Scion are in the exact same idea of just brute force the lane or shove in the lane. So it's well, we can never have priority with this champion against this champion. And then he always basically tags along his jungler, or you can tell he's been calling his jungler, or times it so he can always use that pressure to go bottom lane or top lane. It just happens repeatedly. So if you are a coordinated team, week 5 or 6 or 7, whatever it is, then you can actually start building plans around that where you don't need priority. You can play defensively early on, but early on in the split, you're not dealing with that well. You're not dealing with that well. You lose pressure. You lose a few fights or something. And I think that what Doinby does is not only just the ability of playing a very simplified early game that works out well for his teams, but in all of those teams, he just understands what the team needs and he fills it. If he feels like he has a very talented team now, then he basically can do well to support his side lanes. And that's technically true for Rogue Warriors as well. But on Jagu Reapers, there were times where he was just outputting DPS because he was the primary carry, on Vladimir repeatedly. So I felt like he always understands what is needed from his team, and he can output that pretty consistently.
Right, what do you think of the status of FPX then? As I alluded to, they're top of the league, they're undefeated, but I assume most people expect they will be superseded as the split goes on. So are they a legit contender, as the record suggests?
I think no, and I think the next 2 weeks will do it for us. Literally, it's tomorrow, and by the time this gets released, we'll see what the results are.
Sure.
They go up against Invictus Gaming. And then immediately after that, this is probably the hardest run. It's they go up against RNG and then TOP, and then on the last on the road is EDG. And I feel all of those teams are playing super well as it stands. So if FPX can go through that and be able to at least beat 2 teams is what I'm saying. If they can beat EDG and RNG, then they can be a finalist team in my eyes. If they beat TOP, RNG, I'm just saying, any of these teams, if they come out with a high win rate against these 4 teams coming into this, then immediately there's respect there. But as it stands, I just feel their first 4 weeks were a little easier, and on top of that, I thought that they had a really great way to start out the split, a great win condition.
Yeah, I think for me the big thing is with against a team like RNG, right? As soon as RNG have any priority in the side lane, they collapse really fast. It's they know how to react really well when the waves are in their favor.
Yeah,
it's generally the big thing for RNG. I think that there were some holes in their recent match against TOP, when they overstayed their push on top side, and they put all of their vision on bot side and didn't even contest any of the wards on top side before they reset or anything like this. And then so TOP could immediately just posture around Baron and take it. So stuff like this, RNG are kind of still messing up on a little bit right now. But I think overall, all FPX FPX are not going to be the team that sets up the vision around Baron in the first place really well. They're going to be the team that they're going to be group mid already. RNG is going to push out their sides, and then they're going to collapse and take the fight, and they're going to probably out team fight them.
RNG is that, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but like, so that kind of team, yeah. IG is a bit more interesting because it really depends, I think, on how you're playing mid lane. Because I think Rookie has like greedy resets sometimes. So teams like TOP can, like Knight, can really take advantage of that to an extent because Knight's like reset timings on the block are so smart. And if he doesn't get it, or if the enemy mid laner gets first blood or something, he's like, XX, come over here.
Yeah.
And then he gets the better reset off of that. Like that's like, for me, that's he knows like what item breakpoints he can abuse his laner and stuff like this. So I think that Knight matches up well against Rookie for that reason. So yeah, I think there's not really, like, Doinby is not that. He's just gonna brute force you at whatever item breakpoint you have. So it depends on what kind of matchup we get, like if IG get red side or whatever else. So yeah, I'm still kind of confused on IG a little bit, but we'll see.
Here's the other question. Yeah. Oh, yeah, go on then, Raz, if you had something to add.
I was about to say, both these teams, FPX and IG, are pretty, like, in terms of vision score early on, just control wards being picked up and placed. IG are the worst team at the moment in terms of picking up control wards. And that's not, like, I think that's more indicative of their style, just because they utilize Ning early on just to be that ward to constantly track enemy jungle when they're having 3 pushing lanes. It's like, that's usually a good place to start. But for FPX, we're doing like, as a team, they are actually pretty good at picking up and placing control wards, but their hole is actually in Doinby, where you're right in a lot of the times where Doinby's previous teams, a lot of it, like Rogue Warriors, is defined by a team that is team fighting, but they're not a team that actually gets control of the massive objective first. So a lot of the times, this is what we're seeing from FPX too, is that they can out team fight if they're put in a position, or they will be mid to push, but they'll always be trying to fight an uphill battle where a team's already had a pretty like well placed position around Baron or Dragon. So I think in this situation versus IG, it is probably going to be decided in the laning phase because of how IG is so focused on like getting their laners ahead. But in a later series like RNG, I think they're just going to lose based off around not having. Yeah, what I was about to say, I think both the RNG and IG series are going to be decided by completely different fashions, which is like for IG, it's going to be purely decided, I feel like, in an early landing phase and skirmishes that'll happen like 15 minutes, I would say. Where in the RNG series, it's based around like major objectives like Baron and Dragon, where RNG should, and they're in a good position with Karsa where they have control of the position first. And it's going to be like, in this case, FPX having mid shove, but needing to fight for that position. Because I feel like that's been the constant issue with like Doinby teams like FPX, Rogue Warriors, and Chagu Reapers, where they don't have the vision to begin with, but they're kind of basic, like hoping on taking on opportunities. And like that's good early on in the split, but when you get later on, you need to be able to have the focus of getting on the map earlier, getting vision on Dragon, you know what I mean? So like you get really messy games with them, and I think that's these two series will be decided by different things, but in the RNG, that's when it's relevant.
Okay. So the other team that's had a brilliant run so far, and again, people want to know how legit are they? Actually, they don't have the same problem that FPX has, Raz, and this is obviously Top Sports, because they have beaten the top teams. They have played the top teams. We've seen them have these wins. So they've beaten RNG now, and this is, in theory, the real RNG. You know, there's none of that bullshit of like, oh, but it's still in January. That's not real RNG. You know that doesn't count. This is the real one. So what do you think of Top Sports?
Tops, and like I think their individual laners remind me of IG. So like in the sense of their early game, it's super good. And then I thought they would teeter off in how they'd play out later game team fights. But even in the late game team fights, oh my goodness, they were so patient. And one moment that really like strikes out for me when it came down to the Elder Dragon and RNG were very desperate at this point, and they've been trying to get to the objective faster, maybe rush it and put themselves into 50-50 situations. Like that's when Knight had his highlight moment of flashing in and killing Karsa. It's like you have great moments from these players that you'd expect them to rely on that, but as a team they don't. They play solid for the first like good portion of the game first. So I think like you're right. TOP are a really good team right now.
Yeah, I think that they're good. 369 is someone that people kind of had their eyes on for a while. And then so his debut was pretty hype, and I think he's kind of lived up to it. Knight has been someone who's been, I don't know, I feel like Knight's been hyped for like literally his entire life.
Yeah.
But
how do these people get the hype? Is it from like scrims or solo queue, or what normally builds it?
Yeah, solo queue or LDL or solo queue or LDL. But yeah, for Knight he was really good in solo queue, and then he played on Young Miracles. I feel like being on Young Miracles is just like the source of every.
It's a pretty good name if you want to be considered a fucking prodigy.
Ever. Like almost all of the really good rookies have come from Young Miracles in recent memory.
It's a shame they bum out of promotions.
They cannot promote, save their lives, but all their players get picked up, so it's fine. So yeah, he was on that, and then when they didn't promote, he channeled all of his negative energy into the Korean ladder, and he was like permanently number 1 on the Korean ladder for ages, and everyone was like, I would mention Knight, and they say, you mean, so they would think I was talking about Knight, NIGHT, the Korean mid laner for Giants.
Yeah, a couple of seasons ago, yeah.
Yeah, and then they would be like, oh, so you mean the other Korean? It's like, no, he's literally Chinese, but it's okay, fine. But yeah, he had a few issues. I'm not entirely sure what his suspension was about. But he did have a few issues with suspension, so now he's back. And I think he's delivered more on this team than he has before. And part of that, I think I attribute to XX. I feel like their synergy has been really strong. So when Knight is one of those guys who will study, like, okay, in this matchup, I want to back at this point and get this item break point, and then keep my opponent in lane with this freeze and do this type of thing. And you can only do that if you have a good jungler who's going to play around you, right? So, yeah, I think XX does a lot of interesting things in the jungle. Like, he'll over-prioritize the scuttle on one side and then walk all the way up to the top, to the other side, so his bot lane is safe, and then walk all the way up to the other side of the map. And that exposes him to get invaded on, but he knows that his laners will get ahead, on that side because he's there, and he knows his bot will be safe because he did that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that he's kind of an underrated part of why his team works really well, but like their top side is really strong. So.
Yeah. I think XX in particular has been, I said last year he was the most improved, but I think right now he's probably, I'd give him top 3, but I can't name junglers off top. I think Ning right now Ning and Karsa are instantly top 2 for me, and then I'd probably put XX immediately afterwards, just based off of how he's been performing. And it's easy for him to do that because his solo laners are just that good. So what the plays he makes top sides are just rewarded almost instantly, or at least one great move just pays off for minutes to come. But I've always felt like he's been consistent regardless, so that's just a benefit that he gets from that one. I think XX has been super good. Early on in the split, the bottom lane is just it's been difficult for them to play their roles because they're going to be on weak side for the most part. But I think they've really come into their own, and then they're just great team fighters. So this team is just built to last long.
Ignoring the obvious lack of playoff experience, should Knight be contender for should he be MVP candidate? Should he be considered perhaps the best mid in the Chinese region at the moment?
I don't think that that's unreasonable. I think he's the best performing one right now. Yeah. For my money, I think we've had good performance, and that's not saying something lightly, right? I think we've had good performances from a lot of mids lately. Like we mentioned, OMB. I kind of criticized Rookie earlier, but I still think he's really good. And Maple's not bad.
Yagao maybe.
Yagao is good. He has some champion pool issues still, I think, but I think Yagao is also very good. Yeah. And then like there are certain things that even Xiaohu does. Like Xiaohu's really good at zoning his opponent from objectives in the early landing phase, stuff like this. So he doesn't like he knows when he has to roam to join the objective, when he can like position himself so that the enemy laner doesn't come and then they get the objective for free. Which is not the most intuitive concept. But he's pretty good at that, and his champion pool is insanely meta right now. So, yeah.
I think the mid lane pool is the best in the world.
It's pretty nuts, isn't it?
It's pretty insane.
And by the way, that was without us even mentioning Scout, just because he obviously always slips out of memory. So it's pretty fucking good mid lane. Oh, they've also got Kuro there just chilling in the background.
The thing. Like going through all of these mid laners, like the fact that Xiaohu's been performing so well. We already mentioned Yagao, Yuki, Doombi, Scout, Kuro, Rookie. Like this is insane. And even Corrin's been playing very well in his own right, but he's not even in the conversation at all because you're not performing that well. So I would give it to Knight and Doombi, like are the two front runners.
And then I would have to take Knight because I just think like what he does is more planned. So yeah.
Okay. Classic Kelsey Moser position there, where it's like this person should get figured out by everyone else. It's like, but they're not, Kelsey. It keeps working. Yeah, but they should. It's like, all right, well, you win then. My bad. It's like I actually can. You know what? This might sound like a blasphemous statement, but over time, I actually have sort of figured out what common ground Kelsey and Vetro were able to meet on. It basically is like the name of the European show I do, Elitists United. They were like, right, well, if we can both just agree, we both know everything about what's happening, then we can ignore any petty differences, and we're right. So there you go. Sort of like some sort of fucked up version of Team Rocket or something. So, and all the little H2K players are like, I don't know, they're not that great Pokemon, put it that way. You know, like the little ones that do one attack for 10 damage. So, but you know, some of them had potential Raz. Like I'll give Sheriff. He was like, you know, waiting to evolve into like a Gyarados or something from a Magikarp. So fair enough. You know, he did it in the end.
I only know Patrick.
Well, he's changed his name now, and he's had that moment where they destroy all the branding and just go with a blatant, boring first name. Don't know why they do that personally, but whatever. My favourite one is the players who do it where it's not even their real name. Like, why have you picked that? It's not even your name.
Patrick.
Like, I think this is what because the thing is, I'm going to skip around the big names for the moment. Like, I want to do an interesting one now. So I think. Let's get Kelsey's take on Jingdong. What do you think of where this team is at the moment? Because obviously this is a team where a lot of people would have thought, if you look at where some of the talent's gone, yeah, they've got some good players, they lost some players, like, you know, maybe they shouldn't be that good. They've kind of been like a dark horse this split. What do you think of them?
So they get this team as like the ultimate Renekton Elise team, where they basically just ignore whatever is happening on the rest of the map, but we're going to dive top lane as much as we possibly can. That's what's going to happen. And if you look at their roster, it's not, you know, the worst idea against some of the top teams, because I still feel like Zoom can be, like, if you go man for man, Zoom can be your way in against a lot of these, like, stacked topside rosters. Like, Zoom is not a bad player by any means. Mm-hmm. And, like, Yagao, like I said, he has good champions that he can be really strong on, but he's not going to be, like, Knight or Rookie or anything like that. So I think Zoom is a good play, but then it just gets to the point where like you can be victory 5 and figure, oh, just pick Vayne. They're not going to do anything to her the entire game. She's just going to scale. She's just going to chill. And then we're going to like 4v4 topside, and Vayne's just going to chill, and eventually she'll carry the game.
So this is the team where the problem is you have to ask the balance question. Is it better to have the top laner 3-0 or the AD carry 3-0 at like 30 minutes?
Yeah, or just, you know, have some sort of map control on the bottom side.
You could do that as well, I guess.
You know?
If you need to.
Just kind of balance your early game approach a little bit more. It's again like one of those teams that we mentioned, like the FBX team, where they have like a very straightforward kind of approach that they're taking. And they're pretty good at getting that top tower early, but if they don't, it's bad. And even if they do, sometimes there are ways in for even like lower tier teams. So.
One thing I'm worried about with JD is like when it comes to their bottom side of the map, as you said, like they're perpetually weak side. And in terms of Imp and Lu Mao, they do look for fights in 2v2s, and they come out in the losing end more often than not. Like Imp right now has died the most of any bottom laner in just the laning phase alone. And so like kind of like that's that, like it happens because he's like last time around he didn't die. It was actually Lu Mao that died. So it's like one of those things where it's like even when they're supposed to play weak side, on a team that like compared to any team, like they just do not pay any attention bottom side of the map. They don't understand their role even to that degree where it's just like, okay, well, it's probably why Bavoy is seeing more play. Then you see the core of the problem is just like their bottom side of the map is just like even when it goes to team fights, they get outclassed by the top tier teams at that. So losing Loken has probably been the biggest detriment to this team, and it's really shown to show because I think their jungle is getting better. Like not like better to Clid, but I think that their jungle, if they were comparing both those players, that I don't see a marked difference. Where I'm saying right now their jungle is not a hole on the map. It's more so like how they've been playing through AD carry, where they don't feel like a complete team as they did like last year.
Yeah, I guess let's put it this way. I think that initially, like Levi kept getting subbed out just because Flawless was better at playing around topside.
Yeah.
But I think Levi is getting better. It's just not necessarily showing because they keep playing Flawless. But
is there a point to changing the two? Like, isn't Flawless good enough? Seems like they win a fair few games when he's in.
It's kind of weird that they picked up Levi. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Like when they signed him, I was just like, this guy's. Well, they're probably not gonna play him. Like Flawless is. I don't feel like Levi and Flawless are different enough in terms of their play style and the way they approach the game to justify picking up Levi, unless he's gonna completely change to be a totally different jungler. Like if Levi were a bit, I think. Like, Levi is very mechanically good, right? But he's not the smartest, most deliberate jungler. And then Flawless is already that. Like, Flawless is already basically the epitome end of spectrum of that.
Sure.
And I'm not a fan of how the last two teams... Apologies, Kelsey. Like, in those two situations that he's found himself in, I'm like, please, play him. Like it's one of those situations where it's like... right now, like, I echo the sentiment where we even said it during the off season, where it's like, well, I think they're just going to play Flawless. Yes. It doesn't make sense that they would play Levi, and if they play Levi, then it's like, well, what are you doing with Flawless? Like, I don't understand the idea in off season where teams pick them up and they don't know how they're going to be using them.
I think the thing with Levi is that it's actually like, so this is when SFM first came to Snake, right? They had a trilingual roster. It was kind of a similar approach to this, where it's like all he did was gank topside, and like I did an analysis of like his jungle pathing in the early weeks, and it was like the most predictable thing I've ever seen. Yeah. And everyone was praising him because he was mechanically good, but it was like he had to play that way because I think the communication was rough. They had to have 2 translators just for him, because they couldn't get a Vietnamese to Chinese translator that also understood the league terms. So they had to get a Vietnamese to English translator to talk about the league terms, because he could or a Chinese to English translator to talk about the league terms, because he could kind of understand the league terms in English. And then they had to get a Vietnamese to Chinese translator for just for day-to-day stuff. So he came in for his first press conference, his first interview, and I was there. I was there doing press interviews with them, and it was just it was kind of messed up because you would have to go through both, and then one translator would translate part of the question, the other translator would translate the other part, and then you get something that didn't resemble an answer that matched anything that you asked, and you'd ask, if this is how it is to be with him, for him to be in their team environment, this has to be so difficult, actually. So importing the Vietnamese jungler in that setting seems hard. So I don't know if maybe Jingdong found a better translator, or they have a better setup, but this is the second time Levi has been in, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like it's got to be pretty rough for him.
I think he must have the same agent as Flame, because it's like, why do you keep joining teams where it's like, hey, I'm going to be in a rotation, I might get in the starting spot. It's like, you won't, idiot. Like, you're never going to get in that. Like, the other guy's going to get in. No, I believe in myself. Like, give me a chance. Like, stop doing this to yourself. Just join a team that wants you. See, in many ways, it's a lesson for everyone out there in the world, all the young guys, you know. Like, don't be chasing someone who's, you know, they're not interested in you. They've already got their eyes on someone else. You've got to find someone who appreciates you for who you are and all your flaws. Well, maybe that's unreasonable to say they have to accept all your flaws, but, you know, they have to at least acknowledge some of it and give you a chance. That's all I'm saying. Okay, Flame. Okay, Levi. You know,
when your second jungler is flawless. No. Anyway, the
too easy. The alley-oop. There we go.
I refuse to deliver it, but I was
no. But yeah, it probably is a bit better because Snake also had the problem that they had a Korean mid, right? So it's like on top of that you have all this. But Imp and B-Boy have both been in China for a while, and I know Imp's Chinese is good right now. B-Boy's is probably good. Their coach, he's also been in China for a while, so it's probably not the same level of complete and utter no one understands what's being said ever as Snake was. That's probably hard. Yeah.
Okay. Right. One of the teams, I'll just go ahead and set this up for anyone who's never seen the show before. But, like, you have to understand, unfortunately, nobody can escape what I would call, like, the event horizon of nostalgia for EDG. So every EDG team, it always starts, like, here are the reasons why I'm disappointed in you, EDG, and that you're not one of the best teams. Fuck you for these reasons, X, Y, and Z. Why aren't you better? Why does this lineup not work? Fuck off, hotshot. Potential's not a thing. Stop saying that. But at the same time, they do keep managing to be decent enough. You have to keep talking about them. So I'm always really torn on this team because on the one hand, if you like tried to analyze what they're doing in the game, a lot of it looks like shit, but they still have good players and they still do win games that maybe they shouldn't always on paper. What do you think of this team, Raz? What is EDG like at the moment?
At the moment, they seem like a team that have found like what made them successful at Gauntlet, I guess. I was weirded out by the fact that during the Gauntlet run, they figured out how to play out the map. Like, they were a lot more disciplined to a certain degree, or at least understood how to play the map. And then when they come back, you're like, none of that. Absolutely none of that. We're back to being like 5 individuals. Like, we want to prioritize the matchups, but like everyone doesn't understand what their weak side is. And then specifically, Ray was a victim to that for the first 3 weeks. And I think that right now, I think it's like bringing back Clear Love. I'm not too sure what the calls are, but in particular, he's just picking champions other than per se Jarvan that are not supposed to be out on the map early. So it forces you to be able to play slowly and to understand that you won't be the one having priority, or you won't have the jungler that's going to be constantly like bot side or top side. So they're forced to play a more slower game, and I think that that's what all they've needed, to be honest. Have you seen how they played against WE, Snake? Like, they've been having some hectic games without him. They bring him in, and it feels like them taking down Swinning, then taking down like JD recently, this today actually. They've done it in much more slower fashion, which like they already had the talented players, and it's nice to be able to say that I think Ray is just playing better, but now it feels like he has the ability to play slower through what the calls are. So I think it's hard that it's ridiculous that they keep finding themselves in this situation. Because I think that Haro is mechanically the stronger jungler, and he should have had the experience. And I think even during Gauntlet and Worlds, like, he came out and it wasn't an issue of discipline per se, even though they did lose some games in like crazy fashion. But it feels like those problems just keep reoccurring.
I feel like EDG feels a lot like a team where too many people are talking in a way.
Yeah.
Because everyone wants to do something around their lane, right? And if the jungler isn't listening, then they do it anyway. So it's like 3 things happening at once. But the benefit of having someone like Clear Love, such a Clear Love game, like on every reset, he pings out what his path is going to be. And he's probably like telling them, okay, I'm going to be here at this time and this time, because he has the experience jungling. Like, a lot, it takes
That's
years.
A pretty smart idea, actually, yeah.
I mean, a lot of junglers will call their path like on reset, yeah, right? But they don't have the experience to know that, okay, the wave is going to crash by the time, like, on bot side, by the time I'm around bot side, right? Like, I can tell my laners to build this wave. Like, a lot of junglers don't, like, necessarily know these things, and it's, like, it takes, like, some newer junglers, you have to, like, teach them how to look at laners' waves.
Yes.
To know, like, what lanes they can play around, how they want to set up the wave to play for Dragon, like, all this type of thing. Like, what camps can they do if they want to be here by the time the wave crashes? What sort of camps? And I think that takes a while, you know? And so if Clearlove can specifically say, I'm going to be here, like, start building the wave here, that's probably going to help them be a lot more deliberate in how they're playing out the game. That's, like, Hara, like, I feel like EDG has, the reason why Clearlove has had such staying power in EDG, and they've gone through so many junglers, is because it's hard to teach, like, a younger jungler to do that right away, and then, like, they just bring Clearlove back, and then the younger jungler's like, I'm not going to get any playtime, so I'm going to go to another team. So they have to process again, which is why I think they made a very good decision last year to play Hara so much, because then he's slowly getting that experience. And then it's like a lot of times players like, gosh, I forget his name now. The really popular one who left a couple of years ago and is now officially...
Fire Lily, Mouse.
Yeah, Fire Lily.
Fire Lily, yeah, Fire Lily.
It was like Mako was like frustrated because he wasn't playing like Clearlove, you know? Like those types of situations. So I think Clearlove coming back is good. It gives them the direction, but I hope that they continue to play Hara so that he gets the experience necessary to be able to do those types of good things, right?
You need to force them in those positions, really. You can't just... I agree that you can't just put them in the situation where it's like you already have to know it, or we're just like immediately going and favoring the wins. Like, I think one great example of like legitimately the difference between Clearlove and I'd say Suju and the Rogue Warrior set, where Vladimir and Jason in top lane was like basically being swapped over. Suju had or at least Rogue Warriors had Jace into the Vladimir top lane matchup, and Zheng Chao was doing well, harassing Ray. He was like 30% HP under tower, and Suju was just not pathing up there. I didn't think he even had eyes that this was happening, and so like would prioritize bot side of the situation. And so it was like Ray like got out of laning phase, had farmed equally, and got out, and like his team fights were ridiculous. And then literally the next game, lanes are swapped. Clearlove is just every building wave is top lane to help Ray out. So like Zheng Chao has to leave the lane when he's Vladimir and under tower HP. And these are just situations that most junglers, and I'm just like the newer junglers coming into the league, like do not have eyes on or not experience in being able to deal with. So like that's something, that was the game where people memed Clearlove because he had 1.9k damage. All he did was just like all he did was like farm up, look at lanes, counter, like stay around a counter gank, or like if he needs to, and then go top to push Zheng Chao out of there. And you're like, oh my goodness, he just literally did 0 damage, but had helped out his lanes to like continue, like to just excel the matchup. So I was like, well, sure, that's the difference.
Well, he's just scaring the other top laner. He just shows up. I could come. Oh shit! Better back off.
Better leave.
And then it's like that meme. Like, my work is done, but you didn't do anything. So it just fades in the background of the jungle.
I mean, yeah, it's like a small thing, but sometimes junglers just gotta learn. Sometimes all you do is play pin cord, and then your laner wins.
Yeah, it could be worth it. Yeah, it's the same as I've always thought. The most crazy statement is when people analyze like what they call a failed gank, where they're like, "Sure, he got the flash, but like, was that really that big a deal?" It's like, that's pretty. Like, that's better than nothing. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
that could win you the lane right there.
Yep.
You know. Right, okay, what about this then? So we've avoided talking about the big two for the moment because I want to set up some of the rest of the league. But RNG has to start being good soon. Like, they've got the real team now, Raz. So what's going on? What am I waiting for? Where's the champion RNG? It's going to take over everyone. And because I noticed in the back of every analyst's mind, because RNG hadn't fully gotten going yet, it's like for all the other teams, you could always go, sure, they're good now, but you know, I'm sure by the playoffs come, RNG will be all the things I want a team to be and more, because every Chinese analyst secretly, like, still stuck about 3/4 of the way through last year. Like, RNG's still the best, of course. They're always the best. And, like, if Riot hadn't fucked with the meta, they'd be the best. Evil Riot. So, come on, Raz, where is this RNG? I'm waiting for them.
Oh, man. I think they're here. I like, in the sense that, like, this is the RNG that I want to see, which is, like, push pressure on mid lane, that it should be Karsus Yahoo first, prioritizing mid lane matchup, and then OllieJ coming in later once he's actually like built up items, rather than like trying to hard force every like pressure through bot lane. So like it's basically they've been starting out pretty late with OllieJ coming in after Chinese New Year's, and on top of that, their only real loss has been against TLP. So like that one, I already envisioned that to be a really high best of 5 in playoffs, where I honestly don't know who would come out as victors in that one, because like like we saw in that series, 369 versus Amazing J is just insanely difficult for Amazing J to play out. And even though Amazing J is known for being like super creative and great in like mid and late game, Lightning Phase matters, and he just got smashed in lane. So it's like
he did play against Jace one of those games, but yeah.
There's that one. It just feels like there was one specific. I need to remember that situation in laning phase where he just got he went for a minion and it was just like all over there. But nice. As it is, but amazing. But yeah, I think right now RNG how it is, they're just like with how Amazing J's coming into this one. I feel like they're always like meant to sack the lane when it's Let Me, Amazing J, or anyone that isn't Satai, to be honest. So from that point forward, I just think that TOP is just that good of a team. Like they should be top 2, top 3 around there, and RNG are just going to be battling up against them, and they have to be a better team fight team. That being said, we've been on 9.2 since the time.
It's China behind like 2 patches again or something.
Yeah, it was Chinese New Year's that fucked everything up.
Yeah, Chinese New Year's always so it's better now, right? Like China's usually not behind, but whenever Chinese New Year's happens, like the government can't approve the patch, right? So
right, yes, I always forget about that one.
They have to wait, and then by the time like get 9.3, they say, we may as well wait for 9.4.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just so people know, like Chinese New Year's coming into this situation, it's so much different from any compared to any Western holiday, because it's legitimately just a week where it's just like shuts down. A week of everyone just goes home, sure. Their time at holiday, spend time with their friends. But yeah, everything has to get, as she already said, approved by the government. And so by that time, you're like, well, we're waiting on 9.4. And I'm like, great, this is awkward. Like, especially when 9.4 comes out, because you still have to wait a week until it's been out and live, and then it comes out in competitive. So we've been in 9.2 land where pressure's not on AD carry, and a lot of it is just, play through mid, and the Kali really, assassin mids pretty much rule the day. So I'm just waiting, biding my time for RNG to be able to play, great, Sivir, Xayah, except, he's still playing Xayah, but not doing any damage because he's still decided too early on in the game. So I'm just waiting. It's going to be an AD carry meta soon, or at least more so towards an AD carry meta. But that's when it's going to be coming online. The longer the games get, the meta gets, that it really does favor RNG because they can play through mid and AD carry.
Kelsey, right? Mm-hmm. I have a question for you, which is every time I ever ask Raz about Amazing J, he's always so complimentary. He has optimism. He believes it can all be great. Surely you will be the sort of balancing agent here.
He's great.
What do you think of Amazing J?
So I think the nice thing about Amazing J is his TPs. I think he's really good at teleports. And he knows when he should and when he shouldn't, and that's kind of a tricky thing, right?
Sure.
So he's creative with them, right? He can stall out pushes pretty well at the right time. He's not just reactively teleporting. He's looking for opportunities. So I think that will be really good in conjunction with bot lane. When bot lane is playing, because right now on 9.4, it seems it's a lot about Kalista versus Lucian and getting first bottom tower plates early and first dragon, and so those types of situations, top lane TP is pretty good. So I think that'll be useful then. But I think even Let Me is a better carry player than
Oh no. Oh no.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm not the biggest Amazing J fan. So
I just don't see it, man. In terms of Let Me carry, he reminds me of Mouse, where literally like Mouse would have those games on Jace. I'm just putting this out there.
Okay, come on then.
Just like the Mouse would play his carries, I guess, lower like below sub 500 teams. And you're like, hey, you know what? Mouse is a great carry player. Like he can play his Jace. And then when he goes up against much better teams, it's like, well, we shouldn't do that anymore because his laning phase is not good and you fall behind and then puts the team in the detriment. And that's my case on Let Me. Where Let Me, when he goes against like better team with carry matchups, he just makes detriment like larger mistakes. I wouldn't say that it's like on par with Mouse, but it's in the same situation where you would rather see them just play what you know he's going to play in playoff time.
And I think it got to that point over time, and that could just be in line with what he said on Weibo about like he kind of lost passion for the game a little bit, you know, and wanted to take a break because you kind of you stop caring about like, oh, I could get disadvantage if I hold the wave here. Like you just kind of like, I want to cue the wave with Ornn and Maokai. Get me out of this game, please. So I couldn't see. But like he came into LPL and he was like one of the better in his debut season.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I think like RNG, and I always it's like back in the dawn of 2017 when RNG first came together, they were a 1-3-1 team and all of that.
Best of times, so right?
It's like I'm just holding on to that still, and I want to see that RNG again, and I feel like we kind of saw glimpses of it because Carso was playing to control topside in a lot of these games, but I don't think Amazing J is the guy to do it, and that's the issue. So, like, with Amazing J, I'd rather they just play, like, what the meta is going to be at 9-4, which is we get the bot plate turrets, we get the dragon, we swap. Like, RNG, I think, have, like, the swaps that make me hate my life the least when I watch LPL, like lane swaps. Like I think their lane swaps are good compared to a lot of LPL teams. So that's a really cool thing, and I think that they'll be able to get those off.
I just love the idea that you actually liked RNG because they could 1-3-1 properly and they had all the lanes necessary to do it. You know, like, great, we've got an LPL team that can just do this all day. And then by the time the actual world gets to know RNG, they're like, oh, I can see why you love this team, Kelsey. It's like your favourite player who's raise the poppy. Yeah, I love this shit. Yeah, season 3. Yeah. It's like, no, that wasn't it. Like, they were doing other shit, I promise.
But I also think Xiaohu's champion pool is really in meta as well. Play like bot to mid, or mid to bot, like pretty well. Like Syndra's really good right now. Rise is pretty good. So yeah, LeBlanc, like I think his LeBlanc is nice. I prefer his LeBlanc to Maple's right now for sure. So I think that they can play mid to bot really well. Like Amazing J will come online with the teleports, and we'll see really exciting RNG. It's hard to play RNG's like one style without without your top laner being ahead, because they will push up the side lanes first and then use the I can walk up, right? And it's like really safe for the mid section play the way that RNG plays, but then Amazing J is not getting pressure and Joe pushing up here, and then everyone just goes to his lane, kills him. It's like, well, that's a failed experiment. Let's try again next time.
Yeah, I will say this, that Amazing J is not known for being a good laner. He is not gonna, like, this is probably one of his worst patches where he's like, people are looking towards him. And what's, by the way, once again, a very stacked top lane region where you just see a lot of like 369 was a great matchup where once again he couldn't match up. And I think like going up against like Xiao Al, the Shy, Zoom, like he will have tough times in lanes where he's now just basically going to be looking forward to like the 20 minute mark to just get out of it. It's like, get me out of this lane. But I think like his team fighting, once again, like that's what I really enjoyed Amazing J, because I think that he's one of our best team fighters in the league, where RNG picking him up, like that's the intent. I think that they just decided that they were not like they were cutting the whole split push, and we were all like, oh, we can do anything with our 8-man roster. Bullshit. And that's unfortunate. I think that was probably motivated by internationals just being like, you can only take one player, and so it's like, what's the point of actually adopting this style if we can't use it in international events? And it sucks that that's the case, right? Because I would have loved an RNG at internationals with like Zatai, Let Me, and maybe even Amazing J if you had him on. Because I thought that was really cool to be able to just bring in Zatai, or like bring in literally anybody except for AD Carry, I suppose, to kind of buff up this team or reorganize what their priorities are. And if they wanted to just use Karsa and MLXG as they did in a regular season to just like in that one game in funnel comps, I was like, that's cool. Now they have none of that because it's like, what's the point? So I think they've literally just said we're picking up a team to team fight because that's what we need to learn during regular season.
In many ways, the LCS approach.
Yeah.
Like I was literally while you were talking about that, I was thinking, Amazing J would be so good in NA Academy.
He'd be amazing, wouldn't he?
Take that back. What
He'd be a god. He'd be a god.
Because I don't know, everyone's picking Poppy right now, and
that's true.
I'm not entirely sure why, but Poppy every game, Amazing J living it up, NA Academy.
Okay. Right, here's another team, Raz, where I'm actually hoping for at least some dissenting opinion from Kelsey, because the next team we want to talk about is obviously Sunning. This is supposed to be the super team. Kelsey, they finally did it. They got the 3 members of the Flash Wolves we actually all wanted to see, got them into the LPL, and 2 of them are on this one team. Now, you already are someone where I wouldn't say you hate it, but like you're mildly skeptical of Maple the last few seasons, right? Like you're not the same player that kind of popped off in the international stage originally. So what do you think of Sunning then? Because obviously, like if you look at the record, I will say they have messed around with the lineup a lot, and they were still doing that even in this last match where they bring in like the sub jungler and the sub mid laner. And I know like there's no point ever asking Raz, like, why is that Raz? It's like the same, illness issues or something like, which is like the code word that we're just never out to know what it actually means in China. Apparently everyone's just ill every 1.5 weeks.
That one surprisingly, time
it was actually that one time, right? Well, that's the joke, isn't it?
This is the one time.
Exactly. So what do you think of Sunning overall then?
All of RNG got sick that
that one.
Unlucky.
Off of solo queue, that was a good one. Yeah, so I am gonna immediately alienate myself and say I like Angel.
Oh, there we go. You know what? You're not alienating yourself, okay? I'm fine with that.
I think
I was just having... Yeah, go for it.
I don't know. I don't know why I did that. He could get Lost Chapter in that matchup. That was fun.
That was nice.
And then Angel comes in and he backs against Double Dark Seal, and I'm like, yeah, my boy, let's go. But
my God.
this is how I judge mid laners.
Fucking hell. All that matters is that it was important to you. Don't let anyone ever downplay your interests, hobbies, We all have our own idiosyncrasies.
No, waiting for a Lost Chapter means that you're gonna struggle to use your advantage well in against Akali, I think. So that was kind of my issue with how Maple was playing that out, and LeBlanc never really seemed to come online in that game, where I feel like Angel had a lot more success playing arguably a harder LeBlanc matchup. And then I think Weiwei is fine, but he's Hacker is just good, Hacker is one of the better junglers in the LPL, and it's kind of a situation where I can see Weiwei ramping up and eventually being like the jungler that SNG go with, but it's weird because Hacker is also pretty young, right? Yeah. So you don't really need that right now. But it's okay. I don't mind. I think Weiwei did a pretty good job in the game against IG overall. Yeah. So I think Sword Art is nice because it's is a good addition to the roster, because where he puts wards, generally in most situations are pretty good signposts for jungler go here, jungler don't go here. Jungler can get information off of where enemy jungler is, and we have good tracking. We can get a big advantage. We can take these Wraiths. Wraiths! We can take these Wraiths.
Yes.
Get them.
Yeah. Sometimes two words just get blended. Yeah, it's okay.
We don't have priority here because we know that it's not going to be contested by the enemy jungler. We know that we have complete vision control on that side. So I think Sword Art is really useful for the way that they play out their early game.
Well, here's the obvious question then, Kelsey, is like, when people called it a super team, if you know the LPL and you know all the players, because obviously the ones that don't have the name value are the ones that were on Flash Wolves, for example. Like, people bizarrely just don't know the top lane in the jungle. I think people vaguely know SMLZ. They've at least heard some of the hype over the years. Like, isn't it kind of underwhelming that this team hasn't kicked into some higher gear and become one of the elite teams? Like, there is still something that holds them back, right? Like, you look at the lineup, you think, look at this fucking bot lane, look at this jungler, what mid lane in theory should be good. Top lane obviously is mad underrated. Why isn't this a super team?
I think, so for me, Suning do not reset for objectives well. And by that, I mean, so the enemy team says, okay, it's a good time to get a dragon. Back here, I can get an item advantage, and I can go back out. We get wards on the map, and the next push, we get the dragon. That's this pretty standard setup. Suning will be like, oh, they're backing because they want this objective. So we're technically behind in the play, right? We're technically behind. We're just going to take the dragon now while they're backing. And then they're going to show up on the map and potentially, and we have to back again. And we're behind, and they're going to take our tower, that tower. And so we got the dragon, that was, but we don't have structures on our map anymore. So that was not as good. So that's kind of how I feel when I watch Suning games.
I think, yeah, I agree. I think another thing too is like they trade when they shouldn't. Like, especially in game 2 versus IG, where they had a pretty decent lead through 100% through jungle. Like, Weiwei was playing super well. Weiwei was playing well. Bottom lane was getting advantages. Like, Angel was incredibly far ahead. And then they literally start trading side lanes, where Ezreal's top side when they're losing mid lane turret. Or in particular, there was one when Angel was bot side. Like, IG, when shit gets rough, they group up and start looking for things to do. Like, they start looking for like fights to group up on through mid. And if they get mid lane push, they just go for top side. They try and upset you. They literally just become a gang squad. And if you have a lead, oftentimes, like in the past, like last year, they would just challenge you on that one. Like, teams should be able to challenge them like in their roams, or at least look for great TP plays. And Suning in situations when they have the ability to look for it, they will not. Like, Xiao Al, even in the last game, just like decided to, like, he had TP, he came back alive because he died to one of these gang squads, and they were going for rift, like enemy team was going for rift trails. He's like, I'm gonna go bot side. We'll play a slower game, wait for them to recall. And I was like, well, why are you doing that? Because they're just like, Suning in particular are the least bloodiest team in the LPL. Like, once they get like past like just throughout the entire game, they just try to play a slower game and play them like the more structured game. When the teams around them are like, we have a lead, we'll just smash it through mid or something. So I feel like that's a fine idea, and I think it's great when you're behind, which is why they can drag games out when they are far behind in the series. But like when they are ahead, they should just be trying to go for the kill like most of these teams do. So like that's my major issue with this team. And I like Angel too, man. I think I think Angel's playing well. I think like one thing that Maple was gonna find issues with the league was that, like, once again, there's so much individual talent throughout the league. I think Maple is going to struggle in that regard. So it makes sense for me to challenge his position. It doesn't make sense for me to challenge Hacker's position. Like, what's the point? I understand, like, you have like great upcoming like players in the LDL team, but if you already have a young talent in the gang, it's like, we're going to challenge this young talent that could be top 3. He already showed like a pretty high ceiling with another guy. Like, then who are you really putting focus on? Like, who are you trying to develop in this team? So I think like the jungle strategy is very weird to be putting in Weiwei. But the mid lane strategy I'm completely fine with, because I think Maple does need that fire underneath him, and I think Angel's been already has the confidence from playing last year.
Okay.
I also I would say that part of the reason why SNG are so slow once they get an advantage is they easily lose advantage by pushing for too much and overstaying the plays when they should be backing, and then they get caught, or they don't get wards out because Sword Art hasn't backed for them or anything like that. So they lose their control just because they're trying to get too much with the lead at first. And then it's they can't do anything after that because it just takes one mistake that to start to lose your momentum. And then so their games kind of stall out, and they don't really seem to know what they're doing wrong. And they just stand there and lose the game.
That face.
Yeah. So it's okay. It feels like an SNL thing, kind of, because SNLZ is expecting enemy teams to kind of make that mistake into him, and then he yeses them and kills them. But they're not, the top teams aren't. So yeah.
Yeah.
Should people be worried about the trajectory of Sunning, though? I mean, we've got a lot of good teams this split. They haven't really reached the peak level. They never really had the big win that would prove they were the elite team, etc. Is there a concern there?
I'll go out and say, yeah, they should be concerned. I even said that this team was built to be top 3 and to make it to World. I know it's a long way off for that one, and I think that right now they should be gunning for a championship. But teams that are just far ahead of them right now for me is TOP. So if TOP and Victus Gaming are that far ahead of being able to play out the lanes really well, and right now that's where I think that Suning are kind of struggling in at least one of those lanes through mid. And coordination in team fights being on the map, as Kelsey's been saying, I think that they've been struggling in too many different regards, and I don't know if they can be able to pull that together, especially when it comes to the talent discussion, where a lot of these teams, TOP, I'll say RNG, even to a certain degree EDG, with how they've been coming better and better, EDG beat them. They have the strategy down pat post 20 minutes, and that's something that Suning should have based off of what is a very strong supporting staff with Comet and EasyHoon, and one of those a really smart player in Sword Art. So I think that's just really disappointing that that's where they've been falling behind.
Okay. Yep. Right, let's talk about IG then. I've left them for a while here.
All right.
Kelsey, what do you think of RNG in 2019?
RNG?
Oh, sorry, IG rather.
IG,
yes, IG.
Okay.
Yes. I don't know why I said RNG there. Freudian slip, obviously.
Yeah.
Similar to how they have been. I don't know. They feel like this when they have their roster right. So yeah, I guess as a refresher for what my thoughts were about them before, they like red side. They like skirmishing a lot. They can be a bit greedy with what they want to do on the map, but overall, they're just good, player for player, and yeah, I think they're good. Yeah.
What would you say to I've noticed that they still do work Duke in it feels like he gets to play 1 out of every 3 games to just prime him for the playoffs, just so if they need him against either a specific opponent or just in the playoffs when they want him to play a certain style. What would you identify as what do you think the concept is of why they use the Duke for one game and I don't know why I call him the Duke there. The Shy and Duke. Why do they use those 2 different players? If put it this way, if someone watched Worlds and they're well, the Shy is just the best top player in the world, why ever replace him? What would you say?
I still like Duke. I still think he's good, and I still think that their macro is better when they have Duke. Personally, you may disagree, but I feel like that one World game where the Shy wasn't quite sure. Okay, let's put it this way. I think Duke doesn't get into the position where he push on Fiora the way that the Shy can. But if he could get there, he would be able to understand the pressure better than
I think that's fair. I think my biggest issue, once again, is just like the Shy is way too talented of a player. And I think even that, like, that difference in terms of like larger macro points later on in the game, the Shy probably doesn't matter because, like, with how snowbally the game is, it just feels like whatever he's doing is the right choice because that's what they play through. But at the moment, my biggest reason for why they're playing Duke is the season is still long, so that's a thing. So like the season is, you got to give a time off, man. You got to give him his coffee breaks. And also, it feels like if you're in the same house with one guy for too long,
Rookie and Bala and get coffee break.
Listen, that doesn't matter. If you're a star top laner, you get like paternity leave or whatever every now and then after you've birthed a monster game, and then that's it. Yeah, the others, it's fine for junglers to play every game. Everyone knows that.
Like, and also, like, if you're in the same house with a guy for too long, and he's just like, and I mean, like, for instance, West has been in the house for a long ass time, and I'm just like, when is it gonna get awkward, right? When is it gonna get awkward where he's just like,
well, he's just every week. Am I in the game this week, coach? No, not again. Oh, sorry, I'll come back next week. Eventually, he's just like, all right, we'll put you in for one game. Just fucking shut up. There you go. It was rubbish. I'll get out. Look, we gave you that game against that bad team. We lost, you idiot. Right, get back in here.
I legitimately believe when it comes down to like lower tier teams, they will put like Duke, give more time to Duke or give more time to West, just to like be able to get them. Because if they have zero information on them, they'll never be able to challenge top lane regularly. And at the same time, in a best of 5, are you really going to use Duke if you've never used him throughout the split? So I think they've gone through that in their meds, and they're like, all right, we're going to give Duke play this time around, but it's going to be the Shy in game 2 or game 3. And I think that's literally the only reason, because the Shy is just better. Like, he's a better individual player, and I think even in terms of like teleport, 2017 is when Duke had like better teleports in team fights, but even then, right now, I think the Shy has surpassed that in 2018. So I don't know what Duke has at the moment to really define himself as a top laner in comparison.
You put him in the side lane and he will not leave it, by God.
He won't leave.
He stays there.
That's very important. Exactly.
That's what he has. Okay. I still don't, like, I don't mind Duke. I don't think he's bad. It would be good on a lot of teams.
Yeah, he should just be on any other team. I just hate it when it's
he should just pull a Soaz Bwipo, yeah, and just leave. Just go to the other team.
I hate it.
We'll see who's right. We'll see who's right. Because all I'm going to say is in Europe, you know.
I despise it. Like when I saw Bwipo and Swaz in the same team, it's like, there's another fucking team that has a hole in the top lane. Fill that hole. Like right now, I see Duke and the Shy, and it's like they're probably making mad stacks, but I'm just like looking at, like, for instance, LGD, and I'm like, they shouldn't have lies. Or I'm just looking at like legitimately, like, I'm gonna go through some of these teams, and I'm like, please fill that hole, fill that gap. Like there's a gap on BLG right now. I'd like for you to know. There's a gap in Rogue Warriors. Like all of these teams would love to have a top laner, and I'm just putting out the application for Duke and many applications for him to join a team and make them either mid tier or top tier.
I mean, if IG can afford it, they are disincentivized to do that. You know, like I just remember the announcement. Jackie Love, West, and Ning. And I was like, these are all, like, at the time Ning was already transitioning to jungler, but I was thinking in my head, okay, AD carry's been their biggest problem. One of these is gonna work out.
Yeah, it's
gonna work out. So that's kind of the situation that they ended up in. But it was, it's kind of a similar approach.
You know, that is actually quite
West
weird.
Would be a good AD carry on a lot of other teams. Like, he's not as good as Jackie Love, but he would be good on a lot of other teams.
Sure. Like, you know, in the same way as, like, in the West, we've had all these, like, AD carries that became amazing support players. And, like, that one vaguely makes sense, but it doesn't make any sense that, like, people like Score and Ning become junglers. Like, what? Like, I guess I'm just going to go with some fucked up logic. Like, they obviously have the ultimate beginner's mind, like the Zen state, because they've never looked at the map as an AD carry, and now they just discover a map exists, and they're like, whoa, how do I interpret this map? And then, you know, the coach is like, brilliant. Someone who actually needs the answers, and he tells them all, this is what you do, and they're like, oh, brilliant. This is great. You can help the lanes and everything. You don't, that's weird, though. So then that guy just keeps calling me bot every single time for no reason, no matter where I am on the map. I ignore him half the time, right? Fuck, if only I'd known this as a pro player, it would have changed everything. Turns out it was my fault after all.
So with Score, I think the logic was probably something along the lines of he was very vocal, very smart with the game, and then his mechanics were kind of running out in the carry position. I think with Ning, it was legit as simple as Graves is a jungle champion now.
Reasonable.
Yeah, Graves is a jungle champion. We don't have it anymore. Please get me in there. I got this.
Right, I think I've figured out Forgiven's return to the LEC. Right, it's time for jungle, baby. Let's go. Plus, then he could go head to head with Yankos. So the narratives all write themselves. They all write themselves. Right, okay, there's not many teams left to talk about because I don't want to talk about some of the bad ones at the moment until they get some big upsets. So actually, you touched on them, Raz. We should probably talk about Billy Gaming.
Oh, great.
You know, this is a team where if you look at the roster they have, I think the position they're at in the league is pretty good. Sure, they've played a lot of the bad teams. I will say that. They haven't played that many of the top teams.
Yeah.
What do you actually make of them? I mean, as you alluded to there, like, just on the roster, there's clearly some holes.
Yeah, specifically, I would say top lane is the most inconsistent I've seen, where ADD can have like a great team fight performance and just like not really, like his laning phase wouldn't matter all too much, but it makes all the difference. Where I just feel like right now ADD is he's exactly what you saw from MVP, so that like that much is like not much has changed in that regard. Where he can get outmatched in laning phase, where right now top lane in the LPL is really decided by how you can lane or like what are the picks you have there. So that has been a real problem. And I just still love the team because they've found a way to play through, once again, like Kuro's excellent, but also Jin Zhao, where there are not a lot of times where you get to say that Jin Zhao is playing really well, where it was like once it was like Aime when they were coming up, where Jin Zhao was like a great team fight carry. And once again, you can say that because he gets the opportunity, like ADD, at least his role is pretty lined out that he's supposed to create spaces like a primary like tank and engage point. And so it makes it a lot easier for this team where they are smarter. I think they're a slower team, they're a smarter team, and they try to play through Kuro and Jin Zhao. And so he gets a lot of space in team fights. So that's what I like about BLG right now, where we're starting to see Jin Zhao and Kuro thrive. But if they fail, like I just want consistency top lane. So that's where the Duke, application can come in pretty hot.
This just is like Thorin's nightmare team right here, because it's like, all of those. Imagine all the esports journalists coming together and writing those. Like they all wrote an individual, like, yeah, sure, on this team, Kuro gets like overshadowed by his side lanes, but he's really underrated. Like he's a really consistent, really strong mid laner. He's so underrated. And I feel like you look at every single member of this team, and that's legit. Like someone wrote an article about how underrated this player was on a team with carries around them. And then someone read all of these articles and decided that this was going to be an underrated team. So they made it. And now Thorin is just like
I see.
in hell.
This was like someone made a team by watching every episode of Drive produced by the LCS about like plucky up and coming players, and they were like, you know what, I want all these storylines to succeed at the same time, put them all in one team and let them eat cake. Let them eat cake. Which, by the way, actually sounds like it would be a fire name for an LPL team. So next expansion, let them eat cake. Think about it. It's fucking amazing. Literally, like, fits in with the theme of just having mad money and just spending it everywhere. It's like, I imagine LPL teams do just look at the West and go, why are they having problems getting a good support on Rogue Academy? Why don't they just get any of the 5 that they have in all their other teams? I don't understand it. Like, what's going on? And then obviously, when Rogue does bring up a player from their Ultra League, they're like, oh, see, that's what they did, yeah. Turns out the West learned our secrets. You just have as many teams as you need. And if you have a lot of good players at one position, joke's on the opponent. He doesn't have any of those good players now, as we alluded to before with the Duke and the Shy scenario. That is such a way. What I like about that is that just shows the difference in mentality, Raz. Because as Westerners, we just think, well, it would be fair if everyone in the team in the league got to have a good player. And then in China, they're just like, well, I just want all the good players. Like, but you can't use them all though. But yeah, but you can't use them either. It's like, well, that does make sense. You're not wrong. There is a sort of fucked up logic to that, but amazing.
but isn't
are they actually? Here's the thing, though. Is the Billy Gaming team actually decent around Kuro? Like, do they actually look like they knew what player they were getting when they got him? They didn't just do the old Vici Gaming thing of like, bring Koreans, the ones that cost all the money, and then they arrive like, well, these aren't the right ones for our team. Yeah, I should probably be more specific. Like, is this a good team for Kuro to be in? Do they at least seem like they know what they're doing with him?
I think so. I think right now they've been the most structured team, and that's usually the footprint of Coach Sim, where like they're really smart when it comes to drafting. They are one of the only teams that will prioritize Cassiopeia and allow Jin Zhao to pick it up, and always look for priority in either bottom lane or mid lane. So like their draft always comes through pretty soundly. And then when it comes to how they enact it, once again they're a slow team, but not to a fault. Like in comparison to Suning, it feels like their objective control through mid, like they basically get the words down where they want it when they want it. And the only issue I ever have with them is like whether they have the talent to succeed in that regard. And I think Meteor is really fresh. So like he's up and down. ADD's career has been up and down. And I'm worried for Jin Zhao, where right now he's having one of his best moments. But once again, I don't rate him as a top 5 AD carry. And when AD carries are going to be prioritized sooner or later, he gets put in the back burner once again. And that's my major concern, is like in the future. But right now, I think they're having a high moment.
Does the next patch figure them out, Kelsey?
I don't know if it's a figure them out kind of situation. They're on a timer before they just. I just don't see any, like, when they face top teams, I just don't see any of their lanes like getting advantages.
Yeah.
It's just they won't really have a direction to play towards. So yeah, I think just talent is really kind of pack. So there are some teams like Billy, I think their namesake, the previously IMA, Billy is like the king of we can push it with really mediocre players, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So there's always that. I remember Coach Kesman saying it's not that, like, our players aren't that good, but if we drag everything out, it's all 50-50 in the end. And that's why all of our series.
That sounds like an amazing speech. That sounds like such an amazing speech. Like, there's almost, what I love is it's pure sophistry, but there's almost like a logic to it. And if the problem is if you let the temptation of like letting that logic dissolve in your brain, you're just done. That's like the psyop is completed at that point. Like,
this is the greatest quote of all time, honestly.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like if you drag things out long enough, then eventually it's just a coin flip. It's like one amazing J tele in the world, guys.
We've got to take it.
Exactly. They've been just warped by that one moment forever. Like everything else is just the aftershock ripple through time of that one moment that shouldn't have happened for whatever reason.
I think they have the biggest luck of the draw, and this is what I'm really concerned about. Well, because here's the thing: in terms of like just like to your point, I agree. Like none of their lanes are put in a position like skill wise where it will matter in a best of 5 in playoffs. But like just talking about their first 3 weeks, super easy. They have a great record, and it's like it's ramping up where their last 3 weeks are like, even just focus on the last two weeks. Their last game's TOP, their second last game's IG, third last game's FPX, and fourth last game's EDG. And you're like, that's a death run. But if we're just talking about we're like going into playoffs, the whole idea of an Oscar night, like I look at this and I'm like, do I want my hardest matchups to be on my last week? Yeah, I would. Like I would want that. So I think right now we're BLG's position where like their hardest matchups are at the end of the split. That is pretty damn lucky. I'll give them that. And I think that right now they're gonna have a great standing at the end of the split is my bet. And then they'll get bumped out first round of playoffs. So that's my that's my take. Like,
at least now Kelsey can repackage that amazing speech and like if she ever doesn't know what she's doing in the draft, just tell the other team, tell your team, listen, technically if you just get to 6 items as well as them, like it doesn't actually matter what edges they have in the game. It's at that point it is a coin flip.
It's a coin flip.
I also appreciate, by the way, that that's also because, like, what I love about league analysts is, this is and it might sound like an abstract point, but this was a point I actually made. Funnily enough, quite satisfying to be able to do this, but because he didn't know I was sort of secretly flaming him low key. But when I had Weldon on an episode of Listen Loco, right, I brought up the obvious topic that, of course, I'm going to bring up, which is the fact that Weldon doesn't think talent exists. And what Weldon didn't actually seem to appreciate was I let him fully explain his position and explain all the terms and what they meant, you know, and put his concepts together. And here's the thing. It's not like what he's saying is nonsense. You know, I can see where he's like drawn these conclusions and what he's basing it on. But what I actually was able to discover basically was he's just doesn't like the word talent. The word talent triggers him. And all he's done is chase the concept which talent is like we're using as a term to cover up because none of us really know what it means anyway. He just chased the concept of talent into the term aptitude. Because what he does is if you ever say like, well, if talent doesn't exist, why is this one player much better who's practiced much less? He'll just be like, well, he has an aptitude for learning. It's like, well, that's genius. You've just changed the term, but you've done exactly the same thing. Like what's mad is you've looped back inadvertently to find a catch-all, which basically is the same as talent. So along similar lines, yeah, that's just the way some people, because what I would say is I would notice modern league analysts love to just use the term coin flip, even when it's just like, that just means you have any chance to win, basically. Like, if you have 30%, they're like, whatever, 30, 70, whatever, it's a coin flip. It's all coin flips here on out. It's like, I don't know if you guys have experienced what a coin flip's like. It's supposed to be a 50-50, you know? Like, supposed to be, could work or could, like, you know, yeah, I don't know about some of these so-called coin flip. I notice most players who actually dare to call themselves coin flip players really are just players who do dumb shit 70% of the time, but they're like, it worked 30%, look. Sometimes I flip the coin and it works. It's like, all right, Two-Face, fucking calm down. Right, I thought this would be a last interesting discussion to have because one of the trends of this show, Kelsey, has been actually what Raz alluded to earlier, which is when you go through most of the lanes in the LPL, most of them are so stacked with talent, it's ridiculous. Like, it's not like in the past where you picked either AD carry or you pick a couple of positions mid lane, got stronger over the years and say, look, they could compete with any region. I think if you're talking pure talent, China's finally fully at the level where, yeah, they have more talent to outstrip most regions in terms of like depth at a position. If you want to just talk good players, like even if China has the best player at position X, Korea rather, do they have 10 players after that? So the one position I noticed we never talk about because it's so hard to grade individually is support. That's the one we haven't ever really had the discussion about. And the reason why I thought it would be interesting for this show is because actually, if I look at the names people would probably suggest for best supports, not all of them are on the top teams actually necessarily. Some of them are on some of the more middling teams. So who are the best supports in the LPL at this point in time? Give us some names to start off with. Who comes straight to mind as like the best?
It's interesting. I just want to, as an aside, bring that up because, like, for ages, I've always said that I think LPL has the best support talent.
Well, no, that's the thing, Kelsey. Like I say, you know, eventually, what happened was they figured out how to replace PYL, and now I agree with you. Yeah, now they've got some good support. So you know. It's a bit mean to say after about 5 years later, but whatever. Yeah. It only took 5 years to finally be right, but there we go.
Mako, Ming were really strong. Like I think Crisp is pretty good. Like I think
FPX
part of it is also just that like LWX and Crisp have been like even when they debuted they were pretty good, and now they've been together. So they just are really in sync with how they play lane. And I think that helps a lot in Rogue Warriors. Like, I would say that arguably this is a very stereotypical OMB team where they come almost all rookies and playing this way. But this time around, he's got people who are more seasoned, right? He's got, and arguably Rogue Warriors was like, but I just didn't think Rogue Warriors pound for pound were like that good. So, but I think FPX actually has better side than. So, yeah, I think Crisp is pretty good. I like Bowen, even though he does have some champion pool issues. I've always felt like 5 can be good. Like he also is not the biggest champion. Okay, so this is a name. This is a name that is going to come out.
Here we go. Hipster pick. Right,
come on. Yeah.
Nice. Hipster pick's coming out now.
I feel like he's always kind of been in the conversation but in a lower league, right? And that's Lay. Yeah?
Yeah, there you go. That's what I'm talking
Victory
about.
5. Yeah, that's Raz's like hipster team, by the way. He that's his hipster team.
That's what I'm talking about.
No. It's such a good hipster team, though. Victory 5.
Yeah.
Well, they have all the underrated names. Well, like again, Westerlund won't know them, but if you actually watch the LPL, like a whole bunch of these people know, obviously.
It's basically an entire team of Royal Club projects. But you know what?
But that's not a bad thing, because Royal Club had too much talent.
And Janu.
I was actually so worried in offseason for this team because I was like, they're bringing Lay back, but they're going to play Road. Like, I was so certain that they were just going to play Road and have Lay on the bench. But it's been the opposite. And I feel like this team is benefiting for that. I really do.
I feel like Lay is overdue, honestly.
Yes,
I think Lay is actually good. He's been good for a long time, and he just hasn't gotten a chance for some reason. So.
Yeah. And plus, he's not Road. So,
there we go.
Thumbs up. Thumbs up. We got him out, boys. We finally got him. We got him.
We got him.
He's out of the league. Good. Right. Here's the question, then. This is the potentially divisive question. Kelsey, one of the problems I have with the support role is that I think it is the #1 role in League of Legends that really does, because people can't properly judge it, a bit like jungler to a degree, but the problem is obviously you can have people like Memento where they can look good even when they're on a bad team, you know? So junglers can still get some shine if they're a very particular type, but I notice for supports, I feel like most people do just revert to whoever the top teams are, right? Their supports must be the best. So the divisive question is this, could Mako still be considered one of the best supports?
Mm-hmm. Oh, as an
what
aside,
does that
also,
sound?
you know who else is good? Mark. Yeah. Anyway.
Yes. Go Queen.
Mako.
Let's go.
Mako. I think Mako is still pretty good. Honestly, I think Mako has a lot to offer and a lot of versatility. I think EDG are in kind of a weird spot, but I do feel like Mako is inconsistent is the problem. Right now, but when he's on, he's really on. There's that.
Yeah, my take on so wow, well, I didn't even know that was the thing. I think like match knowledge, champion mechanics, like active thinking, all of that is just like basically everything any player needs. Support players also like need an added level of just like time management, of being able to work with your jungler or just be out pressuring through mid, like when your 80 carries come. There's just a lot of levels in which you can watch a minimap in professional games. Because like if you're just watching professional games and not watching the minimap, you will never know what a good support is. Like that will never cross your mind because it's like the observer will never look in that direction.
Of course.
Yeah. So I think Mako's really smart, even when the team's been falling behind too. A lot of the times it's because you can say shot calling, but there's a certain limitation of what a support can actually give for your team, where junglers have to come in for like top side view and what top line's supposed to do, or mid lane to a certain degree, because your support is at the end of the day and laning phase going to be focusing on their own matchups. And I think like that's been a major issue for EDG. So even with EDG failing at times, I always like was still pretty high on Mako because the early laning phase has been strong between him and iBoy, and it's been mostly through Mako than through iBoy. Put that out there. So like I would say Mako, you've already said all of the names, guys, but like Southwind is just beautiful, man. I was waiting so long. Like two supports that I've been waiting so long to see in the LPL was Killua, Southwind, and they're finally there. So like that to me, bless. I think that the support and Lay. Yeah. So like just through all of those names, like they're all playing well, and I think the support pool in the LPL is very strong. But to that degree, it is very difficult to like discern what makes a great support, like what really makes a top tier support. And I think really it just comes down to your communication with your junglers. So oftentimes, if you just have a bad jungler, you're just not going to look good. I think that's now that's what I think like right now. Like Kilo will have problems because you can work fine in the laning phase. But where is his jungler going is a question that I ask so often, and I think that coordination still is needed.
And also, like, AD carry is a big thing, too.
Yeah.
Like, if your AD carry needs a certain type of support champ, then I don't know, you might just be on top catch duty.
Yeah.
Or entire, like, all the time. But there are certain supports that are really good at using, like, tempo advantages from top catch.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not necessarily the worst thing. Like, I would say a big part of SDG doing well against top TOP was the way that Mark was using globals to reclaim tempo and things like this. So, yeah.
I think there are a lot of really good active thinking supports right now in the LPL. There have been a few great ones regardless. So I think each split has just been getting better. So at the end of the day, I'm probably just saying that I think about this fairly slowly, that every lane's good. You know, every lane is good. every lane is good in the LPL.
Okay. Well, in light of that then, so okay, if you look at every other region at the moment, major region has one really dominant team. And so actually in Korea, that basically has, if you've noticed, Kelsey, because Korea lost Worlds, that has invoked I'm hesitant. Here's the thing, now that he's not on camera, I think I can start using it again. It's obviously invoked a Jack Dilemma type scenario where everyone's trying to be like, that's the way they're comforting themselves. Like, well, maybe it's just that Griffin's that good because everyone's really trash. And obviously you have to give that some credence because of the turnover of the teams in Korea. In light of all these factors, all the talent in the LPL, surely now it's got to be the one time where we can somewhat conclusively say the LPL is the best region, right?
And I think they are. I think even like so when I look for certain things, because a lot of times when I'm watching games now, I'm thinking, okay, can I use this to explain something to my team, right? So that's a lot of stuff like this. And then when I'm going over like some early game macro stuff, I'd rather go over LPL, even compared to Griffin games a lot of the times. So I think, yeah, from that perspective, there's still certain things that I think do better. Like, I hate most LPL lane swaps. But like SKT is pretty good at transitioning from, okay, we just got Dragon, so we're going to go get Herald now. Like, they're pretty good at that, you know? They just got Dragon. We can still get bot tower. We can get Herald. Those types of plays. And how they move their soul in their bot lane in those situations. So, yeah, it depends on that. I just think, like, the amount of talent is really strong. So if there's a meta like there was at Worlds past year, then, yeah, I think teams like TOP, teams like IG are just really... So.
Okay.
What about you, Raz?
Yeah, I think right now it's like, I would say Griffin are... I would pretty much say Griffin are the best until like we see some top, like IG, like some of these teams find more consistency.
You can kind of give that though, right? Because you could always just use the angle of like, yeah, Griffin might win, but the difference is 2 and 3.
That's the thing.
We don't know if like Sandbox Gaming or SKT would beat these teams, right?
Because then I would put Sandbox and SKT to the side, and I would start putting literally 3 of our... If I just go through some of these LPL teams, I'd go for IG, TOP, EG, RNG, FPX. I literally put all of those teams ahead of Sandbox. So like that's what I would say in terms of depth of teams. Because if I just go through some of these teams in the LCK, I would say some of these teams have great lanes, but then there's like an obvious hole where I'm just not sure about SKT, like Khan on SKT, or their ability to skirmish on top side.
Sure.
And I would even say like it's the same shape with Sandbox, where I don't think they're consistent. Like that's my issue, where a lot of these teams tend to fall off, is where the meta is currently, like their strength in meta is through skirmishes topside and not a lot of pressure in the bottom side of the map. And I feel like LCK is way too slow a pace right now. That's just the game state for them, and their junglers are still playing through slow paced advantage. So I feel like, on top of that, Griffin's just benefiting because they have the best talent in each lane.
Sure.
So if that's the case, then I feel like that's just been the case for a lot of our LPL teams. It's just been through solo lane talent. And if that's the case, then it just comes down to how you're able to snowball that talent in at least like 15 minutes onwards. And I think usually, especially LPL teams, like even they're more practiced at that. I think Griffin are going to come into an international event against them, and they will probably still win in most situations. But the rest of the team, like Sandbox and SKT, will not, because they're not practiced in being able to play in that way.
Yeah, I think it could be an interesting, like because of Lost Worlds, a lot of LCK are clinging to Griffin really hard.
Sure.
I think it'll be an interesting matchup for sure if they end up going to MSI versus the top LPL team, because I don't think it's as clear cut where like Griffin are just better in every way. I think, for example, a lot of the stuff Griffin does, they get away with because their competition is not that great. So like, it's like some of their champion picks, it's actually good here. Is the rest of the world getting trolled? Is they're able to play against teams that aren't going to contest this phase? So yeah, it'll be an interesting MSI.
This video and all of the content on my channel is kindly supported by Dean Tanglis, Andreas Snazore Westerlund, Gardner Wilson, James Harding, OllieJ, Tobias Bernasconi, NateDOhDoubleG, Travis Greb, Tristan Jones, and as always, a special thanks goes out to Jerky's Minion. Do you want to take part in an esports discussion with yours truly? Would you like teasers for some of my upcoming content, see who the guests are going to be? Do you want to ask me a question for my monthly video AMA? Perhaps you'd like to suggest a guest you'd like to see in my content, or a topic to discuss. Well, if so, then put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today at the Patreon link in the description box below.